had a conversation with somebody recently, and because I don't want to talk about it. What do you think this is what they said. What do you think I am? Why are you so special? You won't tell me about that. Why you think I can't handle it? And I told her, I'm like, look, it's horrible. Why would I expose you or anyone to that? Why put that image in your head? I do you a disservice, by doing that to you. And of course she didn't understand and was angry about it. But I'm like,
right.
No, I don't like to talk about it.
Welcome to How I Embraced the Suck, a podcast where you get to hear from veterans what life in the military is really like. I am your host, Walt, and before we start, you should know that I do not censor the show in any way. You have been warned. All right. Today we have with us Hoplite, a former, a non-current Marine, who can tell you more about the insides of your rifle than you can. Hoplite, how's it going?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
Great. I'm glad you're here and able to do this recording. Looking forward to it. Could you just kind of give the listener an overview of your time in so they kind of know what's going on?
I was a 17-year-old rifleman in India Company, 3rd Battalion, 3rd Marine Regiment initially. Became a drill instructor and senior drill instructor at San Diego. Went to what was then called 3rd Light Armored Vehicle Battalion and served as a platoon sergeant, platoon commander, company gunnery sergeant, master gunner. Then became a first sergeant, went to 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment, and was the first sergeant for Echo, Golf, and weapons companies, and then became a sergeant major at Fort Lewis initially, and then at Bangor. I have been a rifleman, a machine gunner, a mortarman, and a chain gunner. And I am a paramarine. So that pretty much sums up my 26 years right there.
Pretty much all the cool stuff that people think about when they think of the military. They don't usually think of the cooks or the transport guys. But
I gotta say, being in the Marine Corps, I have worked with all the services, and gotta love the Department of Defense. If there isn't a real job for you, there is no job. They will move you somewhere else, or you won't be there at all. So everyone has a job, and I've learned to appreciate them.
Sure.
I need ammo. I need water.
Right.
I need food. And eventually I'll have to sleep. And believe it or not, those are the priorities. There are 4 priorities: ammunition, water, food, and sleep.
Right.
And that's an infantryman's life.
The tip of the spear isn't much without the shaft and the guy throwing it.
I guess I need stuff so I can do my job.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's good because I it's good for the show because the public image of the trigger puller, for lack of a better term, there percentage wise there's pretty few of them, but that's what everybody thinks of when they think of the military. So it's good to get that perspective on the show. So I think that'll be a real benefit. If the listener can struggle through this whole episode, we'll see. So what motivated? You said you joined at 17. What motivated that? What was your reason for joining up?
Like a lot of young people that join the military, they want to get away from where they're at, for whatever reason, good or bad. They don't like where they're at. A lot of them are fine where they're at. They just don't know any better. So
right.
It feeds the machine, so it's okay. But, it's just to get away. One of the nice things about military personnel is, for the military person, is they got away. So when I got back from Beirut in 83, I went home the next year in 84, and I'd only been gone 4 years. And I was amazed at how all the people I knew were doing the same exact thing with the same mentality, with no change in thought or anything. And I was like, I've been, I did a lot of deployments those early years. And I'm like, I've been so many places and seen so many things and had a broader view of the world.
Right.
So to see people who chose to remain isolated I felt sorry for them, because they didn't get out. And even if the people who just stay stateside, you are going to be working with people from across the United States and foreign nations who join the military. You're going to get such a broader view of humanity and an appreciation of others, because you see, I was in the grunts the whole time. So there's a lot of downtime, thank God. You probably heard, it's X many percent high volume boredom and this small percentage of frenetic energy of combat. And thank God that is true. So mostly you have a lot of time on your hands. Now, in peacetime, you don't have a lot of time on your hands. You're going to the field, you're getting classes, you're PTing, you're getting tested on your, for lack of a better term, business acumen of your job. So
Right.
You're busy. You're really working all the time to be better for when you go to war. But when you are at war, then you have nothing but all this downtime. So you really get to know people. And I think it's a really good thing.
Right.
So let me touch on this. And it just came to me. All this, it's racism. So you have racism, right? And I believe it is true. You grew up with it, and it is ingrained in some people. So when I got more senior, and I would talk, because I'd talk to my unit all the time. You have formation, so everybody's out there. So, and you talk, there are certain things that the government requires you to talk about. And here's what I learned. If someone's a racist, you can't beat it out of them. It is there. But you can make them stop. You can make them put it in a box in their head and put it away.
Okay.
For now. And it'll be gone, but it's there, but they won't exercise it. Because tell you what, I was very punitive with people about that, because I'd already been to combat and they hadn't. When you go to combat, you realize the people you're engaging with in direct fire engagements, they're so foreign and alien to you compared to the kid that barely speaks your language beside you, but you understand arm and hand signals. You're dressed the same. You're shooting the same weapons. You realize how alike we are. And that literally kills the racist part in somebody's brain, but it takes that fire to make that happen. So, and it's just a matter of waiting, because eventually they'll go to combat and they will learn, things have rolled down on that, thank God, in Afghanistan now. But we are a warlike people. We want to impose our will. We're a young country still, and we have that young country bravado in its citizens. Maybe not in its politicians, but Marines are a lot of military. We're apolitical. We don't have nothing to do with it.
Sure.
We are here for our friends and our squad mates and the people we work with. That's what it's about. It's not about politics. And unfortunately, you'll see some people, they start talking about strategic goals when they are at a operational level at best. And you don't dictate those policies. They need to read von Clausewitz and say, okay, I need to get a better grasp on what I can control. But politics has no place in it. Racism has no place in it, and it's not. It's so strange. The people who worry about racism in the military are the non-combatants, because it is an issue for them, and I get it. It needs to be addressed. If you're a combatant, that shit's gone.
Yeah,
it's. That first shot's fired. That's out of my head. I love you. That's it. And it is. It's true.
Yeah, if you're sharing a foxhole, you're pretty tight. It's not have that.
Plus, you're living together. The old joke in the squad bay, and back, it's can't get along, get it on, and we would. These aren't my real teeth, so that's why they look so nice. But I won that one. Didn't win all the time. It will salt you down in a good way. You won't win every fight you get into, but you just got to make it bad enough for the other person. Like, okay, I don't want to do that with you anymore. And that's the goal to be achieved.
Right.
So, and eventually I reached it. It took me a while, but I reached it.
I think it was Louis L'Amour in a couple of his books. He has a character who will get in a fight and lose, but then he comes back next week and gets in the same fight and loses, and then comes back the next week and just keeps coming back and wears down his opponent just by continuing to fight and losing. So
I think he was one of the Sackett boys.
I think,
if I remember right. I have 83 of his books.
Okay. I think in a lot of, he does kind of go for the flamboyant, like the typical cowboy experience, but also he's pretty good at his characters and creating.
He's a very good author.
Yeah, enjoyable for sure. What would you say the differences were? You kind of did touch on it already, the difference in busyness. But when you're stateside versus when you're deployed to a war area or war zone or whatever, what's the differences in your roles, your responsibilities? Obviously, like you said, when you're stateside, you're training, you're super busy all the time. When you're in war, you have more downtime. What else are some differences?
Parabellum, prepare for war. But you're getting my limit. Yes, I was in a long time, but I have very limited experience.
Sure.
This was, a combatant role. So you're always getting ready for war. That's all we do. We're either at it or we're getting ready for it. So, there are, in the Marine Corps, you have divisions and you have air wings and you have force service support groups. Those are the three big chunks. But then you have bases. So there's the administration and, support that a base provides, but it's just so you can get ready for war. I mean, that's the life. That's the Marine Corps. So, and yeah, we all have our, cooks and truck drivers and helicopter mechanics. And even when I first joined, they've even done a better job of it now. Every Marine is a rifleman. That's what they tell them. And they are trained to be a rifleman, and then they will go to their advanced schooling for their specific military occupational specialty. But you need to be able to use a rifle, bottom line. So, because in my father's lifetime, you might be fighting. My father was a rifleman in World War II in the Army and fought in the Philippines at the end and was in Alaska at the beginning. So,
right.
Yeah. So, the guy got back from the war, bought a Volkswagen, and that's what he drove for the rest of his life was Volkswagens. He would not buy a Japanese car. The hate. Yeah. He had it.
Yeah.
So never talked, say, well, he never talked much about, my father never talked about anything. So I imagine in retrospect, I guess it was pretty bad. I know he was shot in his right leg and had the chunk of meat missing that's I asked a question when I was like 4. My mother told me to shut up and we never talked about it again. But I was able to find information out on him that my family, my siblings never knew. But as I got more senior, I had access to things that they could not get to. So I could find out a little bit of information. And a lot of times, it's funny, I get information about people that they shouldn't have told me, but they would tell me, because I'd be talking to, like even after I retired, I would be talking to this retired Army guy and I wanted information about something. And he would tell me all about the guy, who's long dead, you know what I mean?
Right.
And whose children are dead. But he's like, the Army still keeps these records and, we're not supposed to talk about it, but, good people.
Yeah, I wonder how common that was. I remember the book Flag of Our Fathers.
Yes.
It's written about the 6 or 7 guys who are raising the flag in the picture on
Yes.
Iwo Jima. And I think in that, one of the fellows in the picture, his family found out that was him when the author was doing the research for the book. He'd come back from the war, and it was a closed book. He never talked about anything. I wonder how common that was back then, because we hear about stuff like that now. Guys come back, they don't talk about it, which I understand, and we seem to think that that's a recent phenomenon.
I had a conversation with somebody recently, and I got, because I don't want to talk about it. What do you think this is what they said. What do you think I am? Why are you so special? You won't tell me about that. Why you think I can't handle it? And I told her, I'm like, look, it's horrible. Why would I expose you or anyone to that? Why put that image in your head? I do you a disservice, by doing that to you. And of course she didn't understand and was angry about it. But I'm like,
right.
No, I don't like to talk about it.
Yeah. I'm doing you a favor and you don't realize it. You don't even appreciate it. Huh. Yeah, that's
excuse me.
That's true.
Here's the deal. The best way to get through negativity about military personnel when you are or were one of them is to be grateful for the fact that this is America and they can think whatever they want because of people like you. Because without you, you know what they say. If you can read, thank a teacher. If you're reading in the language of your forebears, thank somebody in the military. Because, it could be German or Japanese, depending on which coast you live on.
Sure. Yeah.
So I'm glad society is protected and has no concept of what some of the things that go on. And it's just, I'm glad. I don't want people to know that or think,
Yeah.
See, I'm speechless about it because I don't like to talk about it.
Right. No. Yeah, so. I understand. I mean, as much as I can, obviously. That is something that I've, obviously as a civilian and knowing a lot of civilians, that's something I've noticed is maybe just because civilians don't understand the depth of it, they tend to be calloused about it. It tends to be a very surface, thank you for your service, and that's it. And then they expect to just jump right into your experience.
Or you give them a small snippet of something that was really bad, and you look at them and they're like, oh, whatever, blah, blah. You know what I mean? They're like, they don't get the severity of it, and you're like, you didn't get it. And then you think, I'm glad they didn't get it. I'm glad they didn't get it.
Right.
So you just don't talk about it and move on.
Yeah.
Now, look, if I would tell anybody coming back, if you need to talk to somebody, talk to somebody. Yeah, unfortunately, now it's a lot different than, 30 years ago, where you're like carrying a lot around in your head and you couldn't talk to anybody about it because the more senior you get, the more, and you want to advance, you want to excel. But why do you want to advance and excel? Do you want it because you want to have bigger rockers on your collar, or do you want to do it because you can have a more positive influence on the collective whole, which will give you more influence over more people? I get promoted, I now have this.
Sure.
You should do it. If you do things for positive reasons, you will do well. And I personally did well. I don't know how. I'd always just say, a lot of good people working for me, I'll see people and I'll be talking to them and we work together. And I say that. I'd say, oh, we work together at this, this place. I won't say this guy worked for me. I don't say that. It's not right. That means he, I'd say we work together, and I just let it go at that. And that's the best way to say it.
Yeah.
Because tell you what, that guy who worked for you would be much better if you had a difficulty than this person who has clueless, person that you're talking to and introducing them to.
Right.
That person knows you a little bit. They'll have your back. So yeah, I worked with him or her. Mm-hmm. Though I didn't work with women until briefly as a gunnery sergeant, because I worked with some reservists and we just happened to have one. The reserve component's kind of cool. The reservists are the most motivated people. Gung-ho, we call it gunji. Mm-hmm. They're the most gung-ho people. And then the regulars pick on them, say they don't know what they're doing.
Right, yeah.
Well, here's the deal. They do it one weekend, a month, and have a 2-week thing unless they get deployed. You give them a few months deployed someplace, they're on. It's like all their experience comes back to them, and they're fine. And they're still motivated. So I have no issue. Guess who fought the Korean War? Bunch of reservists. A bunch of recalled World War II guys who were reservists. So, they get a bad rap sometime from the regulars. But once again, we are the victim of our own ignorance. If you don't have any experience with something, you just don't know, but then you form an opinion. But hey, that's America. We can do that because military people made it so you can be that way. The dog chases his tail.
Right.
So... but I never worked with women really until I was a sergeant major, because that was my first time out of the grunts, was as a sergeant major.
Oh, okay. Right.
And it's rough. The learning curve is rough. You've probably met people. I just call it like it is. I say what it is. These are people I avoid greatly and have made it a point to do so. I have no use for someone who is inarticulate and has no tact. They don't get things done. Uh-huh. They are not a benefit to the collective whole. You want people who can tell you the bad news in a way that you comprehend it, understand it, and sometimes with great rapidity as it's necessary. Those are the people you like. Unfortunately, some people aren't like that. In the combatant world, we're all very direct, but we're not assholes about it.
Sure.
It's just time management. Mission. What is the mission? We're all here for the mission.
Yep.
We're not here to preen or look pretty in our blues or anything like that. And it's just, like I say, I can only speak for being in the grunts, but there's lots of good people out there in all jobs and all services. It's funny. I know Navy ranked like crazy. I know Army ranked like crazy. Air Force confuses me sometimes. I just know which parking spot is the spot I'm allowed to park at.
Right.
Like I go to McCord Air Force Base and I'm like, I can park here. This is like Senior Master Technical Sergeant. I'm like, yeah, I got my sticker. I can park there. So, but yeah, this guy is checking me out before I jump out of the plane. I trust him, obviously. And I'm jumping out of an Air Force C-17 with a parachute that was packed by a U.S. Army guy because I'm jumping with them. And I got my corpsman with me, and he's jumping with me.
Right, and he's Navy.
Yeah. So we're all there, so, you learn, everybody has a job. So, yes, the combatants get glorified by the civilian populace, and the combatants don't want that glory after the fact. It's, you're glad you did it. Some days you're like, am I a garden variety sociopath that's just occasionally triggered in psychopathy? Or am I abnormal like those people over there?
Right.
That is how that's what we think. That's what you have to be.
Yeah.
So you have to continue to function no matter what. So, but everybody has a job. So, and you do your job, everything's fine. Don't do your job, guess what? This is the Marine Corps in the grunts. As a non-commissioned officer, which is, okay, you have your Lance Corporals and below, which is the way to say it. We used to call it non-rates, which is a naval term for non-rated men.
Okay.
So until you got petty officer, you had a rating, and there will be something on there saying, I do this job, and it's right there. It's a rating. So if you were E3 and below, you didn't have a rating yet because you weren't experienced enough to be considered good enough to have the job, so to speak. That's old Navy, like way back in the day, but the name stuck, non-rated, non-rate. And it wasn't an insult in my early years, but later we just say Lance Corporal and below. Cause, you don't rate, ha, ha, ha. See, too much time on your hands.
Yep.
You'll think of some weird
Yep.
stuff. But, so in the Marine Corps, E1 through E3, of the 9 pay grades, E1 through E3 is Lance Corporal and below. They're non-rated men. Mm-hmm. E4 and E5 is a non-commissioned officer, corporal and sergeant. And E6 through E9 is staff non-commissioned officer. And when you make staff sergeant, that's like a cut between rowdy kid and adulthood.
Okay.
In the Navy, it's E7, chief. You wear khaki. So they treat
Right.
the E6s like they're still kids, because they're not in khaki, which ran into a problem for me at Bangor when we got all the Master at Arms, the Navy police in to work with us, with a bunch of grunt kids. Mm-hmm. So because they would treat the E6s like they were lowly. And I'm like, no, they're E6s. And you're in our command now. They're going to get treated. So guess what? I said, this parking area for staff NCOs and officers, they can park there now. Ooh, the chiefs got really mad about that. You're giving them privileges. I'm like, they're doing an E6 Marine Corps job.
Right.
They're assigned to this command. So, I digress. Everybody has a job. You do your job and everything's fine. You don't do your job, your peers will take care of you, because that is the Marine Corps grunts. As an NCO, you don't have it too bad. You're going to have that time where you're just going to have to impose your will on somebody, and some people only understand physical violence. Mm-hmm. That is how they got, and they'll either make it or they will be crushed. The machine will eat you and spit you out. So, but everybody gets tested. So, but the peers take care of things. So if you're an E3 and below, some Lance Corporal is going to take care of it. He's going to see something wrong. He'll see an NCO point something out, and he's going to take care of it. Mm-hmm. And that's going to be the next corporal right there. He's going to get promoted. And it goes up the chain. We police each other. So, life is good.
Huh.
Eventually you reach a point where things get formal and people get punished, but you try to avoid that whenever possible.
Sure.
In the military, if it's the Navy, it's called Captain's Mast. In the Marine Corps, it's called NJP, non-judicial punishment. In the Army, it's called Article 15.
Okay.
I think the Air Force calls it the same thing. Air Force is still a baby. They weren't around until 1947. That's a formal punishment. And in my world, that is you only do that at it's kind
right.
of like, Dan, you're out in public and you did this thing wrong. We have to formally punish you. Oh, you did this thing. Tell you what, I'm like, just got that motorcycle, didn't you? I hold my hand out. I'm going to have the keys for a week. Or we can formally, I'll read you your rights and we'll formally. So it's like, here's the keys.
Right, right.
And it's a way of policing your own.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know about the other services, but last I spoke to Marines, and I do that a lot because I'm retired now, but I live by a bunch of Marines. They still police their own like that, and they'll handle things as a kid, and the command overlooks it.
Yeah, sure.
I don't know if you've ever worked at a job where, you get together with your peers and like, my boss is so weak, he's horrible, blah, blah, I never say anything because I love a boss like that. Because I will usurp his authority and I will take over the command, and I would do that, and they would let me, and it would be my company, it'd be my platoon, and then it was my company. So it was fun. Life is good, but there's a responsibility that goes with that too. You will set the example. You will do things right. You will not make any mistakes of action, and that's another thing. I love people. I loved having peerage that I could advance by, because if they don't know what to do, they don't do anything. Always make the mistake of action. Always do something. If you don't know what to do, you do something.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that.
If you're just a fire team leader and you have 3 guys, do something. That downtime, let's do something. So, makes us better people. A counselor once asked me, who raised you? And I said, books. Books raised me. Because that is true.
Sure.
I like many broken home childhood thing, so I grew up reading books, isolating myself. I was very introverted. But at 10 years old, my brother joined the Marine Corps and came home in a full khaki uniform in 1973. And I'm like, I'm going to be a Marine. And it's funny, you see people, it's kind of like hearing a foreign language and not knowing what the words are. And years later, as you learn the language, you look back and you remember what was said. And now you understand so much more about that time when you didn't speak that language. So watching my brother, he was not a very good rifle shot. Mm-hmm. You know, he had one little ribbon and he had a shooting badge, the basic shooting badge. I didn't know. I just saw it as I'm like, I like that. This is what I'm going to do. And I started reading. I'm like, I'm going to be a rifleman when I grow up. Decided at age 10, this is what I was going to do. Because what are the books? I'm reading all these World War II books, all these Korean War books, all these Vietnam books. Right. And they're written by these guys, so that's what I'm going to do. Okay. So when I went to boot camp at 17, I just told my mother, you have to sign the papers. And I said, look, it's a 4-year contract. If I don't like it, because my brother didn't like it at all initially, if I don't like it, I'll just get out that much sooner if you sign the papers now and let me go in. So she signed the papers.
Right.
And I got to India 3-3. I was still 17 years old. I was supposed to go to the 2nd Battalion and not the 3rd Battalion, but because they were deploying. But it was kind of funny. They go, oh, you 3, you're still 17. You can't deploy Oconus. Now, we had just got to Hawaii. I was in a receiving barracks, and I raised my hand, and I said, but we're already Oconus. We're in Hawaii.
Right.
Shut the fuck up. Get back. So, yeah, you learn. The military has its own way of doing things. You can't deploy outside of the United States if you're not 18. So I went to that unit and they had me in my first rifle, and I was very upset because age 10, I knew I was going to get an M16A1, and they hand me that first rifle of mine that was going to be my rifle for good out of the armory, and it said Hydromatic Corporation, Division of General Motors, model of XM177E1. And I'm like, where's the rampant colt? Where's the pony rising up holding the spears? I was upset. But knowing the foreign language that was spoken then and knowing now, I had this prize rifle of only a couple thousand, the lower receiver. It was just a small carbine that they made that didn't work very well in the jungle, so they changed it and made something else, but they had all these perfectly good parts, so they just made them into regular rifles.
Oh, okay.
And it had this cool thing called an M203 grenade launcher attached to it. And during my time as a grenadier rifleman, I shot every round in the system. It was a lot of fun. And of course, I always liked guns when I was a kid. When I was 5, I'm like, can I have a rifle? And they're like, when you're 7, you can have a rifle. When I turned 7, my parents got divorced. I didn't get a rifle. I was very upset. So, has to bide my time. And of course, I had guns later, and I always liked guns. So it wasn't the representation of the power. It was the complication of the mechanism that fascinated me. The small machine that could do so much. And, and respecting the fact that they're like chainsaws and yellow sports cars, they are inherently dangerous devices that you cannot make a mistake at any one time. And part of that was having, I must really be focused to make sure everything goes the way it's supposed to. Not focusing on something bad will happen. No, focusing on things are going to go well for me if I control this thing. Because believe me, you control it. I've never seen a weapon do anything bad that didn't have a human involved.
Sure. Yeah.
So, and yes, I've seen, it's funny. We used to call them ADs, accidental discharges. Then we changed the name to ND, negligent discharge, because of humans involved. That's what it is. I saw 2 in 26 years, 7 months, and 12 days. I saw 2 NDs on active duty. Both of them, that person did not even have the most minimal training on that complicated weapon system that they were supposed to get before they were given that weapon system. In the civilian world, I've seen tons. Read the manual. Obey the directions. It's kind of simple. So
even if it's like a Nambu pistol, I think some of them I read, the sear was exposed on the outside, so it was possible to fire it without touching the trigger. even then, that'd still be a negligent discharge. It's not an accident. It's the
if you grab it where you're
human.
not supposed to grab it.
Yeah.
I'm not too familiar with Nambus. I've handled a couple of them. Not my favorite thing. I want guns I can shoot that I can get ammo for without having to order something for it. So I tend to stick to military caliber stuff for the most part.
Sure. Yeah.
Ours are foreign nations. But yeah, some weapon systems weren't designed for a young person who doesn't have a lot of experience, who didn't have their parents teaching them firearms safety.
Mm-hmm.
So, read the manual. Guns are a lot safer now. If they buy something modern, it's very safe.
Mm-hmm.
But they're all dangerous. They're all inherently dangerous things. But like I said, so are yellow sports cars and chainsaws. So just respect the thing and you'll be fine.
On when you were in Iraq, you were in a Bradley, correct?
I was never in Iraq. The Marines didn't go into Iraq. We went up through Kuwait and took Kuwait City.
Okay.
But it's the area, the Southwest Asia, yes.
At one point, you were telling me about you had the chain gun on those and how you used it against tanks and how you targeted what your strategy was against tanks. That would probably be interesting.
I was an LEB 25 crewman and platoon sergeant during the Gulf War. Yes, with a chain gun, it's an incredible weapon system. It can do a lot, but it will not kill a tank. The best thing to kill a tank is a tank.
Right, yeah.
The next best thing is like a javelin, an anti-tank missile. But, there are things called catastrophic kill, mobility kill when you're dealing with armored, vehicles, both light armored and heavy armored. So the goal, shoot off the antennas, shoot the vision blocks. They can't talk, they can't see. Shoot a track off. It'll spin in circles. They can't go anywhere. Try to shoot the main gun. You got to remember, it's got all this armor on it, but the steel that their tank barrel is made out of is a different kind of steel than the armor is made out of.
Oh.
There's ballistic armor, and then there's ordnance steel that the barrel is made. You put one little dent in that barrel, one little damage, they'll get one round off, which will be inaccurate, and it'll split the barrel, or it'll swell up. It's not going to work anymore. It's not going to work right.
Sure.
So try to shoot the barrel, which is like a really hard thing to do, but you're shooting 200 rounds a minute. It's a chain gun. It's an automatic weapon. So you can send a lot of rounds. And every round is a tracer. You can send a burst down range and watch it go in flight and send the next burst before that one gets there. You got to think about sound. So, the sound is way behind those projectiles. They're going to get there and blow up and make their sound, if it's high explosive incendiary tracer, before the sound of them being shot ever gets there.
Right.
And on a 25 millimeter, every round is a tracer, and it's a special tracer. It's in a little stem that sticks out of the back. So in the movies where you see general purpose machine guns being shot, you can be like, oh, the tracers are coming from over there. With that chain gun, it's burning in a tube inside the base of the projectile. You as the shooter can see it. If they're off to the side or it's coming at them, they can't see it.
Oh, okay. I always imagined it was only visible from the rear just by design.
Oh, no, you can see them from the side. And especially if it's just like a 7.62 or 50 cal, you can see it burning if it's coming towards you, if you're off to the side a little bit. And if it's dark, it's going to light up the sky. You don't even have night vision on. You can see.
Right.
So.
Interesting.
Yeah, chain guns are interesting weapon systems. Their 1.5 horsepower electric motor runs it. And it runs off a chain.
Oh, okay.
A chain runs the whole bolt. So it's not a gas system. It's electric. So
those, this might be a little off topic for the listener. I don't know, but I'm intrigued.
I'll be brief and I'll answer you.
It's a single barrel, but is the mechanism behind it similar to a Gatling gun concept where it's a bunch of chambers?
No.
Or is it?
Every round is fed into the barrel. The bolt carrier group rides on a chain that spins around and makes it go back and forth. in a long axis with the bore. So the bolt
Oh,
isn't
okay.
moving around.
Okay.
A chain is. A chain is making it go forward and go into battery and lock up.
So there's still only one bolt.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So that was I didn't understand that.
The cycle of this might help. The cycle of operation for an M16 is feeding, chambering, locking, firing, locking, extracting, ejecting, and cocking. On a chain gun, it's sear, feed, ram, dwell, misfire, sear. It's been a few years. Sear, feed, ram, dwell, fire, misfire, extract is the 7 on that.
Okay.
It's on the back on a dial. There's a dial on the back of the gun. So it's a little different. But
So there's a couple less operations, so it's a theoretically faster mechanism.
it runs by gravity and wind resistance are every ballistician's
Oh, okay.
reality.
Right.
So the mass of all that steel moving around, they can make it fire 400 rounds a minute, but the normal 25, LEV 25 is 200 rounds a minute.
Okay.
The air defense variant fires 400, but it's hard on barrels. So
Sure.
they don't shoot
Okay.
as much. So, yeah, LEV crewman is an infantry job. Rifleman's they're all infantry. So, and an LEV, unlike a Bradley has tracks and is made out of aluminum.
Mm-hmm.
An light armored vehicle is made out of steel and it has 8 tires.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. That was my mistake there. Huh.
Just different missions. But back to it's about people. So, one of the things that people who are in the military and say everybody when you go to your whatever respective basic training, they're going to tell you that you're the best. You're better than all the other services, and they're going to pump you up like that. And then you're going to get out to a regular job and you're going to have that mentality initially, like, well, I'm in the Air Force and they told me I was the best because I do this job. So I'm better than everybody else. Then after a couple of years, especially in the Marine Corps, you get it earlier because you're always working with other services. You realize we all have a job. Nobody's better than anybody else.
Sure.
So, they don't look at other people as being better than them, but they're the first to retaliate greatly if somebody else says something to them, because we're the little guy. We have that, we're small, we have the highest by service. We by far have the largest amount of combatants, and we're predominantly direct fire engagement guys. You go, you find them, you go hunting them, you see them, you shoot at them, and you shoot at each other until somebody wins. I mean, that is the concept. So, and we do have like MARSOC, Marine Special Operations Command, and they do special stuff, but for straight line boots on the ground, the Marine Corps percentage wise has by far more, people in the combatant mode than any other service. Army is obviously the biggest service, so they have more infantrymen than we do, but they have more support personnel. The format, and I always remember this because I learned it, because all the guys, when I was a rifleman, all my sergeants and staff sergeants, all the guys at the platoon level leaders, they were Vietnam riflemen. And we wanted to be just like them.
Sure.
Not so drink, smoke, party like rock stars. They did. Why? Because they already thought they were dead.
Yeah.
They should have been dead years ago. Yeah. So now live, hoo-hoo, I'm alive. So we wanted to be just like them. And guess what? I turned out just like them. So there were some hardcore different thought process because of what they'd been through. So it rubbed off on me. But years later, I got to tell you, the things they taught me, the mentality I learned from them kept people who were in my charge alive later.
Right.
So I'm grateful to them, very grateful to them. They're just different. They were, they didn't care. Didn't care about a lot of things. So
yeah,
they cared about honor and integrity and loyalty. And guess what? That's how I grew up, and that's what I expected.
Yeah.
So They set a good example. Not one that would be politically correct for society, but they set a good example.
Sure.
So that's what you learn. And then when you get out of the service, you realize, hey, we're all the same. We got a job. You realize, wow, I was this little detached thing so far from the center of military gravity as people know it, but I was in the military. But everybody held everybody accountable when you were in the service. Now you're out here in the civilian populace. I got to tell you, there is no one is responsible if no one's held accountable. And you see that a lot in the civilian world. People who do not keep their word, who don't do, and because nobody can make them. So you as a former military people, who are the people you gravitate towards? Other people who were in the military who have they've retained that semblance of, I keep my word. I hold myself accountable when no one else will. And that is how you slowly make civilian friends, because they're friends of people, military people who were, my civilian friends I first made, I wasn't around civilians until I was a sergeant major in the Marine Corps at Fort Lewis in the early 2000s. Wow. And I went out to a bar and I'm like, oh, these people are different. You know what I mean? Because let's face it.
They don't walk with purpose.
Yeah. So I made some friends with them as an experiment, and I like them, but I don't expect a lot out of them because nobody ever held them accountable for anything before. Unless their parents did. Mm-hmm. So your first civilian friends that you didn't have before you joined the military, and you already know they're fuck ups, so that's okay. Your first friends are civilian friends of people who were former military personnel that that you made friends with. Because, they passed muster with my friend who was in the military, so I'll be friends with him. Okay, I'll see what they got. But, you earn it. You had to earn it in the military. You expect people to earn your trust and respect. So, and people will disappoint you, and that's okay. You move on. There's plenty of other people you can make friends with out there.
Little different. You mentioned you were jump certified. Obviously you weren't in the Army, so you can't directly compare. But two kind of a two-phase question of what you do know. How was it different from, say, Army jump school, A, or maybe B, and then the other part would be just what was the process of getting jump certified in the Marines?
Okay. When they closed the place, Lakehurst, New Jersey, that was the last time the Navy and Marine Corps had a jump school, and that was like 1949 when they closed it. We have always gone.
Oh, okay.
Everybody uses the Army.
Okay.
For jump school, and you get what's called I won't call it that. You get jump wings that have very curled wings, and the tips of the wings touch a little parachute on the emblem that you wear.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And that is your basic airborne qualification. And in the Army, you get stars put on top of it and wreaths sometimes for various, like, oh, you've advanced, or you jumped in combat. That's a special one that the Army has. Marine Corps doesn't have that. You get your regular basic parachutist wings. And then if you do certain other jumps in the Marine Corps, you advance to the Navy and Marine Corps parachutist wings, which are gold, and the wings are straight out.
Okay.
They still have the parachute extended in the middle of it, but they're gold. And so you have to do certain day and night combat jumps. You got to jump out of a non-specific aircraft, meaning one that's not normally used. In my case, it was a Huey. So you just jump with all the stuff strapped to you. And when you get so far above the ground, you pull a cord and your pack and all your stuff falls down. It's hanging off of your body. It kind of warns you because it hits the ground. Okay, the weight's not there. I'm about to hit you're on the ground.
Oh, to take off weight when you do hit.
So it hit is hard. When I first, when I went to jump school in 87, you were still falling at 20 feet per second. So you really had to be careful. Later, with the advances in parachuting, putting like coatings on the material, you only fall at 16 feet per second now. But you can still land right on your feet. I've seen people do it all the time and get in trouble for it because you're supposed to practice parachute landing fall.
Right.
So, but as far as parachute mentality goes, a lot of Army people, it's an incentive sometimes. Oh, if you re-enlist, or if you enlist, we'll let you go to jump school too. And then you still go to your regular, what they call leg unit, which is non-jumping unit, if you're in a parachuting unit, like one of the airborne, because there's the 82nd Airborne, which is the All-American. There's 101st Airborne, which is the Screaming Eagles. One of them is air assault now, which
Oh, okay.
they're air assault. They're not. You'd have to ask an Army person, but one of them still jumps, which is I cannot recollect, and I will not say.
Okay.
But if you're in a jumping unit, you get jump pay. So you have to jump every so often to keep your jump pay. So,
okay.
All the cooks, candlestick makers, and everybody, they know you have to go jump. So you have the admin kids. Oh, I got to go jump today, and they'll go and jump to keep their jump pay. Me, I jumped with air delivery, which is a totally different ball of wax. What a lot of Marines don't know is there are 5 platoons that do air delivery in the Marine Corps. 2 of the platoons are reservists. And that's who I would jump with, and my bosses that I had, they're like, oh, you want to go jump? I'm like, yeah, I'll go jump with them, because it's good for the kids to see that senior person going out there and doing. And I would find the kid with the cherry helmet, which is a red helmet that they make them wear. It's their first. And it's like, if you have 3 kids jumping, they'll only have 1 helmet. They'll just make one of them wear the red helmet, which is hazing. And they probably don't do it anymore.
Sure.
But I would sit beside that kid, and I'd say, are you scared? No, I'm not scared. And I'd say, I'm scared. And I am scared. I'm deathly afraid of heights. The thing I learned about gravity is it hurts when you hit the ground. So I've always been afraid of heights, and I was always very careful rappelling or, doing anything. What we're afraid of is not death. It's being severely messed up permanently. We're afraid of physiological, I'm going to spend the rest of my life crawling around on the floor. But if you're jumping out of a plane, it's easy to tell yourself, I'll die. If this doesn't work, I'll just die.
Right.
So I don't have to worry about that. So I could jump out of the plane just fine. It never bothered me. And of course I'd rappel and, so I would have the kid with the cherry helmet on, and I'd be like, I'm more scared than you. And then we would compare notes about being scared, because I wanted him to jump out of the plane. And I'd put it where he was in front of me sometimes, and sometimes I'd put him behind me. You're in a stick, you're supposed to stay where you're at, but my jump masters would let me do that, because I would let them know before we stood up and hooked up, because we were all dope on a rope static line. I'd put him in front of me so he could show me that he could do it, or I'd put him behind me so he could see me do it. So it just depends on the kid, after talking to him on the plane, because these are people I've never met before, because I'm traveling to these sites and jumping with these kids that I've never, you know what I mean? So, and I would just talk to him and tell him it's going to be okay, because it's a scary thing jumping out the first time. What's funny is they already been to jump school and had 5 jumps, but now it's like, when you're in jump school, it's all mass exits, and you're running out and you're touching each other. You know what I mean? You're literally, that's how you jump out
packed
of the plane.
in.
And they're really big on, here's what happens if you run into somebody else's chute in the air. And you pretty much make yourself into a big starfish. So, if you bump off it, you'll just slide by them, because if you weigh more, you're going to fall faster. Of course, right in front of me in jump school was this little girl of about 100 pounds, Army girl, and she was supposed to jump in front of me. And you will get kicked out of jump school if you change the order of the jump and all that. On the 3rd jump, I went right into her chute. And what did? I did exactly what they told me not to do. I put my hands out in front of me to stop myself. It depressed her chute, and she fell about 20 feet like a rock.
Ooh.
And hers opened up and she was fine. Then after that, she goes, how about you jump in front of me next? I'm like, okay. And we switched, and they never did catch us. So, but yeah, it's, airborne units have a sense of camaraderie and a sense of unity that is above a lot of units, because, hey, they do something inherently dangerous all the time, whereas a lot of units don't.
Right.
So I've noticed in the services, the more advanced technically and tactically a sub part of that service is, the more they isolate themselves from the others. So if you go down to Fort Lewis, the SF guys, we call them Green Berets. That's what they're commonly called. The SF guys and the Rangers, they have their own fenced-in place where they live and work, and they're just isolated from everybody else. So, and Marine units are like that too. Like the Force Reconnaissance guys, they have their own little area. They just stay away from everybody, and it works like that. It's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. They're not being dicks like, I'm better than everybody else. Yeah, they just got their own thing going on, and they just do their own thing. It's funny, when I was at 29 Palms, I've always loved guns. So of course I got a bunch of guns, and I sold this rifle that I had rebuilt to a pilot. And he called me at my office. He goes, "Is it okay if I come over there?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir. Just come over and get the rifle." He goes, "Well, do I need an escort?" I'm like, "Oh, that's right. You're an aviation asset, And he was afraid to walk through the buildings where all the grunts were.
Oh, he was Marine. He was just a pilot.
Oh, yeah. Oh no, it's like.
Oh, okay. There's that distinction.
Somebody might yell at me, or I might get my lunch money taken, or and
Right.
it's like that. Believe me. Infantry and Marines walking through another unit's barracks area will get hollered at and yelled at,
Interesting.
So it's those are the old days.
Well,
because we don't know you. So
okay, yeah.
What's funny is you learn whenever you get a bunch of new kids in. This is how I grew up. Somebody would lay a $20 bill on their open squad bay barracks rack. Just lay it there and put something on it to hold it down, but you could see it. So everybody, there's 40 some people living in this room, double racks, wall lockers, and just leave it there and see if somebody took it. Whenever we got new kids, nobody touches it. You can leave anything out.
Yeah.
Nobody's touching anything of anybody else's. Or if there's something you think somebody really did leave something, you go get somebody else with you and you both say, "Hey, we're going to secure that for that person." And you put their shit up for them because maybe they did leave it out. But I've never, it's funny, the level of honesty is, because you think if you got formally punished for stealing from another Marine, you think that was your punishment? No.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Well, and then like you mentioned, the accountability. If you do need to deal with something, you get another guy, so that
they call it TPI, two-person integrity.
Yeah.
So somebody is gone, we go cut their wall locker open to inventory their stuff. We have two kids there, and then another person taking notes of what's in there and putting it in boxes, and it's put in storage.
Right.
Someone's UA, unauthorized absence. After 72 hours, we go and box their stuff up. That's just an administrative thing. That's just part of being in the military. But I don't feel bad about it influencing how my life turned out. I will never be a millionaire unless I win the lottery, and I don't play the lottery.
Right.
But it's okay. My girlfriend, who was a Navy Master at Arms policewoman, I worked with her when we were on active duty. She always jokes, "The Marines trained you to be homeless." And I'm like, well, yeah. I said, but, then again, we graduated up to crayons. We made it past edible finger paint.
Right.
Because if she's going to pick on me, I'll pick on her. But usually I don't take well to jokes, and I just don't say anything back. Because all the people who joke around with me, that they haven't been where I've been, and they don't know. And so it's okay. I just let it go. Don't let shit bother me. Like, "Oh, you Marines are blah, 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 blah." And I get, and with that come compliments at times too. So, just take it for what it's worth. So I've heard all the jokes, and the people who joke with me, I know that they couldn't survive what I went through and mentally have their shit together still. So there is that.
Sure.
So, and once again, it reverts back to what I started with. I'm glad they don't know. So,
One question I had. So you were in for 26 years from a young age. How was your transition when you got out? How was your transition to civilian life? Everybody has a different experience. What was some unique challenges
I'm very
or
fortunate.
experiences?
Well, the lack of accountability. And I'm so glad I made friends with my civilian friends back in the early 2000s as an experiment of what civilians are like, because I learned a lot about things.
Right.
So I'm like, I didn't have too many things. What's nice with me, though, is I walked out the door walking around like I owned the place, and I still do. Meaning I have the confidence. A lot of it I learned as a younger Marine, where I would be sneaking into somebody's command element, and I wasn't, you're not supposed to be in here. If you walk around like you own the place anywhere, people just look at you and let you go. So I could get into places like walking into the women Marine barracks where I'm not supposed to be, but walking in like I'm supposed to be there. We later got married, so it's what I mean?
Right.
But male Marines aren't allowed in there. But if you walk around like you own the place, they think, oh, you must be a maintenance inspector, or you know what I mean? Don't get caught.
Yeah.
So you learn early, but transition, getting out, it's hard dealing with people when there's no accountability and people don't keep their word and no one holds them accountable for it. We do miss that when we get out. We're like, so things always happen. Sometimes you can't keep something, but you learn in the military, let somebody know if you were supposed to do something or said you were going to do something, let the people know before it's too late to do anything about it, that things have changed. In the civilian world, it's not like that. Like, oh, we're going to meet Saturday at 8:00 at this place. And then, and then you don't show up. They're like, well, he was an integral part of what we had planned, and now he's not here, or she.
Right.
So you don't have that in the military.
Yeah.
So you just got to adjust to that and don't have high expectations of people who don't know any better, and because you can't hold them accountable for it. Just don't hang out with those people anymore. That's what I do. I don't hang around with people like that.
Sure.
What do they call them in a civilian pilot? Flaky.
Yeah. Among other things, I'm sure.
So,
one question I do like to ask is, especially being in as long as you were and the experience you have, if a kid came to you, 16, 17, whatever, or younger even, and said, I want to join the military, what would be your advice to them?
I have learned that life is, for people who join the military, life has been a winnowing process for them that funneled them a certain way and gave them a mentality that fits a certain billet. A key example of this is submarine sailors. They were kind of set up to be submarine guys before they were ever in the Navy. It's just life gave them a certain intellect and mentality and an attitude that makes them perfect for that job. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like that everywhere. I set myself up to be a Marine rifleman. Tell you what, you join the Marine Corps and say you want to be a rifleman. Guess what? You're going to be a rifleman, because most people don't want to be a rifleman, because it is a difficult job. A machine gunner or a mortarman has a better quality of life than a rifleman does. Yeah.
Oh, sure.
I know. That guy is beside me on the line or 100 meters behind me in a mortar pit. But guess what? They get more sleep than you do. Remember those 4 things I talked about?
Right.
Ammo, water, food, and sleep. They get more sleep. They had a better life. So I would advise them, what do you like to do? You can't tell them, what do you think I should do, to someone you've never met before. You don't know them. Talk to them for a minute. And if they give you anything to go on, advise them. But you have a responsibility as a military person or prior military person to tell them, well, here's what I did. Now, here's my opinion of someone who did what I did. I am not a good advisor telling someone you should try to be in submarine service. I'm not a good advisor to tell someone you should be in the band in the U.S. Army. I'm not a good advisor for that. I can only talk to them based on my life's experience. But having worked with all the services, I can kind of tell, sometimes, like, you know what, you'd be really good in the Air Force, because you're really smart. And, I can tell you're kind of chubby and I'm kidding. But, if they look physically hard and active, I would tell them to join the Marine Corps or join the Army. Mm-hmm. If they're really good at video games, I'd say I won't finish that because that's the vast majority of the kids now. They're
Sure.
really good with video games.
Yep.
You know, me and my mother would say, go outside and play, and I'd hear the door lock behind me. I was outside while she did housework,
Yep.
and I would run
Yep.
around in the woods. So, but that's how I grew up. But to advise someone to go in the military, I would say, you're going to live it, educate yourself. Talk to me, talk to 100 other people. More importantly, talk to other people, talk to 100 different people who had 100 different jobs in every service that you know of. Because you'll find somebody who will click with you and can say, you know what, I never thought I wanted to be an operations specialist and work with maps and do all that intelligence stuff. But I just talked to this guy and he liked it so much. I think I kind of want to check that out now. And then you go and check it out. And you may not pick that, but I want you to make the best educated decision as possible when you commit to something. Because once you commit to that piece of paper and sign, you've committed yourself to a course of action and you have to honor it. So that would be my best advice. Talk to me and talk to 100 other people.
Right.
And see what they did. 100 different people. Talk to 100 Marine riflemen. Guess what you're going to get?
Yeah.
Be a rifle. Especially me. My dad was a U.S. Army rifleman in World War II. I was a Beirut rifleman, LEV platoon sergeant Gulf War, and my son is a military occupational specialty 0369, which is Marine Corps infantry unit leader, just like I was. And he is in an infantry battalion right now. And I am very proud of him. And words cannot describe how proud I am of my son.
Huh.
And we hardly ever talk. Why? Because he turned out like me. He calls me when he needs help or advice, and he hardly ever needs me anymore because that's why I'm proud of him. Marines are one of two things, at least in the infantry. Initially you're a wolf, then later you become a machine. And the fluidity that you can switch between those two things under duress is amazing. You're a wolf when you're the one shooting under duress, something bad, you're engaging, and you're a machine when you're in charge of those wolves because you have to be cold and calculating and quick. Because bad things are happening. Bad things you may have initiated because you went hunting them.
Sure.
You ever notice that? People don't come hunting us. We go hunting them. And they know why we're hunting them, and they react badly. So you better have your shit together. So, but that is a Marine infantryman. He is a wolf and he is a machine. And that is all I have to say about that matter.
Yeah. 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 I appreciate that. And like you say, talking about your advice to a young kid, talk to 100 different people. That's what I'm finding is as I talk to all these different people, everybody has a different experience. It's not like everybody has the same experience. There's similarities, but everybody sees a different slice of the pie. And that's what I'm really appreciating about the podcast is getting to hear all those different aspects, all those different viewpoints and experiences. So, you have any final thoughts, any wrap up, anything do you want to put out there or promote?
Be good to each other. I would say be good to each other because the more I've traveled, the more I've realized how small the world is. And we're in this together, whether we like it or not, because the only way getting out of here is dead.
Well, thanks for the time. I appreciate it.
You're very welcome.
Thank you for listening to this episode of How I Embraced the Suck. If you enjoyed the show, tell a friend. And as my Girl Scout den mother used to say, stay frosty.
She got me a pumpkin fluff something at Starbucks this morning, and I drank it, and I can feel it.